this computer. Let's see if that works recording. Okay, so this is my fourth episode, I do believe, of AnthroPerspectives, which I'm showing on LinkedIn. And today I have Matt Artz, who, see, I did it, Matt Artz. I just joked with Matt about the German pronunciation, just Artz, so now I said it wrong, but it's Artz. So there's the laugh, first off. So Matt has a really great career in product management and user experience, and he's got his master's from the University of North Texas, same as I do, and he's also been a TEDx speaker. So it's really great meeting and talking to you today. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you work, and what you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me, Keith. Obviously, I'm glad to be here, and also happy to have had the opportunity to watch your previous episodes. I just would like to sort of point out that what you're doing, I think, is very important. The more people that spread the word, I think the better we're all going to be as anthropologists. And I think that dovetails into a question you have related to hiring managers, which I know we'll get to. But
yep.
The effort that you're doing to spread the word of the good work is really important. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. I figure anything you can do, what I'm doing is pretty low tech, and it doesn't really matter as long as the content gets out there. That's all that matters. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so thanks again. But so currently I'm the head of product and experience at Cloud Shadow, also the founder of Azimuth Labs, which is like a small boutique research firm, and then Anthro to UX, which is a small firm that's helping people move from anthropology to UX. On top of that, I've gotten back into teaching. I just taught again over the summer. I taught a product management course at Marywood University out in Pennsylvania. And so, my primary role is my role at Cloud Shadow. And Cloud Shadow is a venture resources company. So that means we may invest services in exchange for equity, depending on the potential business relationship. And I'll explain that in just a second. But so we're a venture resources firm that is mostly investing, software related skills. So research, design, engineering, so on and so forth. And particularly, the products that we are building are obviously software products or digital products. We do a little bit of like general management consulting as well, but it's really mostly based around software. And so, people come to us, they have an idea, we will vet it, we look at financials, we determine if we want to invest in it. If we do invest in it, then we help them build that product, and we take a very hands-on perspective. So, very much the sort of PM role comes into its full potential in that case. We really are sort of leading the project generally in that sense when we have that kind of relationship. There are other times where we're just hired as basically as a consultant doing fee-for-service work, and we have sort of less of a product, influence in that relationship, and we might also have less of a sort of UX influence. They might come to us in a fee-for-service relationship and just want very specific services that they want, and we might not be able to sort of pitch the value of, say, anthropology or of UX and product. And then we also build our own products. So in the past, we built an energy platform, which is used by many of the largest energy providers in the deregulated space in the United States. We sold that about 2 years ago. And we still maintain that actually, but we sold that about 2 years ago. And we are now starting on our next internal product, which is in the art space. I can't speak too much about it today because we're just getting it off the ground, but it's in the art space, and we think it will be a great project that can provide a lot of benefit in the art world, especially like in kind of the COVID era or post-COVID era. So that's what I do on a daily basis. So leading product and UX, basically making sure that we're researching what we should be building, making sure that we're building the right product, helping build it the right way in cooperation with my engineering team, and then making sure that it's successful in the marketplace.
Great. So looking at your LinkedIn profile, your background really gave you a lot of great preparation for your current role as head of product and experience. In light of that, would you say the career path you took is typical or atypical of someone in your current position?
Well, so in general, I think my my path, has been atypical, like within the anthropology space, because today it's very common to hear about people who, they got a master's degree, they got a PhD, even undergrad, whatever it may be in anthropology, and they go to UX. I'm saying UX because that's like kind of the hot thing, right? But they go do something in the business world,
Right.
Especially in light of obviously many less jobs in academia. So it's becoming more common to go that path. I, however, actually have always worked in business and tech, and decided to go back and get an anthropology degree. So I already had a graduate, I had an MBA and was doing my thing in the tech business, sort of tech space. And I decided at one point in time, I observed that what we were building was oftentimes not really moving the needle. So, like basically the ROI just wasn't there for what we were doing. And so, that got me thinking, what else could I do to improve the practice? And so, after some looking around, I eventually found anthropology for that purpose, which in and of itself is kind of funny because, just to diverge for a split second, it's, when I was in my undergrad program, tech business like focus, very heavy into that stuff. I went to a liberal arts college, but I didn't take an anthropology course. And I really didn't even know much about anthropology, which again speaks to like why hiring managers don't know much, right? It's not like everybody understands it. And those that think they understand it oftentimes, like we all make the joke that they think it's like Indiana Jones.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I was studying, I was a biology student and tech. And so I was studying primatology down in Nicaragua. And the primatologist I was working with saw the books that I was reading, asked if I was an anthropologist. And I said, no, I never studied anthropology. We just got talking about it. And it kind of lit lit the fire for like the interest in anthropology. And that was way back in 2005. And I just sat on that interest. And, I read books and it kind of percolated. And then as 2007 comes along and the iPhone comes out and I have this, I'm realizing that what we're building is not working and we have to shift to mobile. It became that's when it really started becoming apparent that the move in that direction would be useful, particularly qualitative research, and the methods particularly of anthropology and how we can bring that into the practice. And, there was of course articles at that time starting to talk about UX and design thinking, and all of those things were sort of bubbling up in in Harvard Business Review and the sort of space that we were in. And so that's really what led me down that path. So again, I think it's atypical because I've always worked in this space and I went to anthropology and brought it back into tech with intention. Now that doesn't mean that the other path is any better or worse, right? Most people are find a very interesting path into UX and product management jobs.
Yeah.
In PM, many of them come from design, many of them come from engineering, some of them come from classic kind of business background. So a lot of us, in that space, there's no PM degrees really, right? So it's everybody sort of finding their way into that in their own path, and so they're all very valuable. And then what you see is everybody in those roles has something to contribute that is a little different. Now, I do think anthropologists have something unique to contribute in that role, but certainly everybody has a strength that they, depending on their background, and those are all really valuable strengths.
It's interesting, your path, because I'm wondering if there is just a slight movement where anthropology might be becoming the next hot thing for tech people to study. I got a message on LinkedIn from someone in Portugal who wanted to go back and get their master's or PhD in anthropology. After having a long career in something completely else. People are discovering, I think, anthropology and all of the things that it means and the impact it could have. And they're thinking, gosh, I got to study this. I got to study this. And kind of similar, my own experience, I did have an undergraduate in anthropology, but I had another master's degree in strategic leadership. And I had a professor advise me, my professor from my undergraduate days advised me that I should go get a master's in business anthropology. And I'm like, no, I don't want to get another master's. I just don't want to go through all that again. I just want to get my PhD in something and be done. She said, no, you need to look at this. You need to look at this. So I looked at it and I got Ann Jordan's book, Business Anthropology, the little one. And I'm sitting there at work in the break room during my lunch, reading it and like flipping out basically in my chair. reading all these things and realizing that everything they were talking about were things that I had experienced in the workplace for so many years at a time, and that the theory was making sense. It was clicking together. And I said, well, now I have to do this. Now I have to do this. And I hope, like, people's experience like yours and the gentleman from Portugal and my own, people understand that, you know, even if they don't want to go back and get an anthropology degree, at least study it and see what it can do for your company, either in tech or an organizational transformation or something to that effect, because I think that's really important. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and you know, your story is interesting because you know, I think you make a great point in that, you know, it speaks to mentorship. And I too did have a you know, a mentor who was one of my professors, and though he himself was not an anthropologist, when he was doing some work up in upstate New York, you know, related to IBM, the faculty member that he worked under was married to an anthropologist. And so the work that they were doing in requirements defining very much brought in, you know, the human element into it way before it was popular. And, you know, as a result, when I went through my MBA program, you know, he was always putting and his name is Dr. Rex Doom at Marywood University, but he was always putting the you know, human at the center of the equation. And, you know, that was at the same time going on as I was reading the things I was reading and helping really kind of pull it all together. And so the reason I think your point is great is because, you know, again, what you're doing with this video, or, you know, to some degree what I'm trying to do when I like write and publish something, or when you write and publish something, is really spread the word and help others, you know, sort of find it and realize the connection there, because the connection can be fuzzy from the outside, very real once you get into it, but, you know, it's certainly still not mainstream. And so I think to the degree that we can all kind of continue being like mentors to the next generation, it's very helpful.
I agree 100%. So what do hiring managers and recruiters hiring for product manager positions need to know to understand the value of the anthropological skill set when it comes to positions in product management?
So again, you know, a really good question. And it's something that I've talked about a number of times here in the New York area with the group around here. And, you know, being sort of like from the tech space, I have framed the problem as like a double-sided marketplace, right? Like Airbnb, Uber, right? You need drivers and you need riders. You need, you know, hosts and you need guests. If you don't have one or the other in the double-sided marketplace, the whole thing sort of falls down. So in our case, you know, we need hiring managers who understand the value of anthropology and understand why that they should hire anthropologists, as much as anthropologists need to understand like what it is that they're applying to in tech, design, you know, organizational, whatever it may be. And, you know, from what I've seen in the UX space, and certainly in the organizational space and like marketing, consumer behavior, you know, you see anthropology show up a lot at this point in time in like job postings. And, you know, there's enough people at meetups here in New York that, you know, it's present, but it's not so, at least not in my experience, it's not so present in the PM space, in the product management space. Now, to a degree that could be regional. Now, certainly like when I went out to San Jose for AAA, I think it was 2018, you know, it was very obvious. That was actually like my first time. I mean, I've been to San Francisco, but that was really my first time kind of like in the Silicon Valley area, especially like meeting and greeting with people who work in the industry. And it became very obvious that anthropology was very much appreciated out there and has obviously a long history out there, which, you know, we know from reading the books, but it became very, you know, real once I was out there talking with people. And so, you know, maybe hiring managers out in Silicon Valley are sort of attuned to the fact that, you know, anthropology would lend itself well to product management. But at least in the New York area, I don't think that's the case. I mean, I'm not out like scouring, you know, job descriptions or anything, but like just the people I talk to, I don't get that perspective. And so in the end, I think what we need to do is one, just raise awareness, right? We need that sort of both sides of the marketplace. We need to make them aware first off, you know, and that's through sort of trying to get in touch with them with various forms of content or meeting and greeting at meetups and just sharing kind of what we have to share, even if we're not ourselves looking for roles. But then specifically, you know, like what we really need to make them aware of, I think, is, you know, like skills like the fact that anthropologists are very adept at integrating into various subcultures, you know, or cultures, if you will, but like the subcultures of an organization, rather that be like, you know, the team, the department, the functional unit, whatever it may be, right? we're good at learning like the languages of other departments. So, even if you haven't studied business, we are sort of trained to pick up the language
Yep.
of whatever it is, of whomever we're sort of studying, so the language of business, the language of engineering, design, whatever it may be. Similarly, like our interest in rituals and norms and all those things are very important in all facets, but, in all forms of work, but, especially in tech where you have, say, something like Agile, which has, not so much, not the Agile Manifesto, but something like Scrum, like, a methodology that's stacked on top of the philosophy, with many organizations using Scrum or any number of methodologies at this point in time, there's very defined roles, rituals, right? And so for our ability to sort of understand that and quickly understand how they fit into the workplace and how we need to work with them and like the meaning of those within that culture, are really valuable skills. And that's something that, I'm not saying anybody else can't do it, but that I think anthropologists are, particularly skilled at picking up on quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, I think we are good culture brokers at large. And so whether that's, finding the linkages, between people, departments, concepts, mediating the conversations that go on, like, because in like the world of PM, like the role is, you're basically making trade-offs constantly and compromising constantly. In many ways, that's, sort of what the role is about. I mean, when you ask people what is PM, you're going to get tons of definitions because it's young discipline. Everybody's still kind of working to define exactly what it is. It's different in different organizations. But, vast part of my day is spent mediating, finding compromises, figuring out, what can I do to align engineering and design and business, all with the goal of meeting the customer needs, but like, how do you shift that around all day long? And so, again, culture brokering, I think, is a great skill. And then, all of that, I think what it wraps up in is really just our ability to work well with the different teams that we interface with, or like the sort of different big kind of functional areas of, like, broadly speaking, business, tech, UX, data science, so on and so forth. And now some of that can be a little wordy. And so, when talking to hiring managers, maybe we want to try to say it, slightly more in a simple way. And, if we were to do so, I think at the core, we're very adaptable, very open-minded, right? We have a learning mindset. We're very willing to learn from and work with others, and ultimately at the end of the day, product management is really about continuous learning so that you're improving and building like the right product, right, that solves the need. And so that continuous learning others' needs is sort of at the heart of it, whether that's your teamwork, your coworkers, the customer, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I really like what you said about culture brokering because, I'm more on the organizational side rather than the tech side when it comes to business anthropology. And I've worked in a couple of places where, there is cultural, maybe companies don't see it as cultural tension, but there is tension between, say, a home office and some of its affiliates, or the home office and the plants, the manufacturing plants. And there's always some clash. You can get on a teleconference like this and you can just, cut the tension with a knife every time. And, it just makes me think, if you have that kind of tension in your own company, with other affiliates, what do you think goes on when you have affiliates in other countries altogether, within other cultures altogether? And I just, I don't know if you saw, but I did an interview with Elizabeth Briety, who had worked at GM, and she was working with a number of different cultures within GM. And it, even then, it wasn't so much about the different cultures, but as far as national cultures, but just the different cultures of the companies and the affiliates that were coming together under one roof to try to even make a decision. Was difficult,
Yeah, no, that was a very interesting example that she gave. And really it's the same. Certainly we can talk about the macro, and that's frequently important today in the way our world is operating, especially, especially in the tech world, right? How global we are with our products. But just like Elizabeth's example, a designer designs something, say, one way, and they want it to work this way, or I'll say broadly like UX, right? The combination of research and design capabilities. They, research something, they design it one way to support that research, and then maybe like, the engineering team basically says this is not feasible, right? Like maybe they're trying to join too many, tables. They're trying to basically like, pull together too much data, and it's just not going to be feasible in the interface in a time that is going to be really, sub the kind of time we need to, ensure that we have a good user experience, like a few milliseconds maximum, right? And so, if we're talking about like bringing together data that's going to take a couple of seconds, it doesn't matter if the design in theory is great, it's just not feasible, right? And so in that, you could see some tension there, or a clash, and those are the kind of relationships, that we need to sort of work on. And that happens, frankly, all the time in tech, right? Like it's a very simplistic example, but it happens constantly.
Yeah.
Just those little, those little differences in perspective from the different teams, engineering, design, whatever it may be, they're real. And those problems need to be addressed on a continuous basis.
And as anthropologists, that's what we gravitate towards. We kind of run into the fire, so to speak. If there's tension or there's some problem going on or there's some argument, we want to be right there trying to figure out what's happening, what's going on, and hopefully, get enough good data, qualitative data to solve the problem, whatever it is. I think that's what we like to do the most.
Yeah, sure.
So you kind of already answered this, but what do you think are the top skills that anthropologists bring to the product management space?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've touched on a few things, and I framed it probably before, maybe from the perspective of what do we need to make hiring managers aware of, and obviously all that stands, but also from our sort of perspective of our discipline, if we want to maybe sort of turn the question like that way, the sort of hallmarks of anthropology are, incredibly resonate here, right? So culture, right? Whether that's sort of your team culture, your organizational culture, the customer culture, whether that's, and that customer culture is sort of local, regional, global, whatever it may be, right? Our ability to really sort of understand that and make sense of that in a complex and meaningful way is a wonderful, attribute for sure. The sort of holistic perspective we have, right? Our ability to really kind of, not just like being sort of trained to think that way, but like it seems to me that many people who go into discipline have a really innate sort of sense of like appreciation for a holistic perspective and really like yearning to sort of learn in that way. And so our interests are generally like, wide and deep. And so that really, I think, contributes to understanding like both first the problem space and then ultimately, the solution space or the potential options within the solution space even. And then, to be as kind of cliche as possible, the sort of Enoch and Edic perspective, right? And that gives us that ability to sort of dive in, work, sort of inside, but then also step back out and really frame it from a different perspective. And those classic things, which we all sort of learn about in, our sort of 101 type classes, they really do resonate here. And that's why they are sort of the hallmarks, of course. But, those are very valuable things very valuable concepts that I don't think, we should take for granted. And then, of course, ethnography is sort of the hallmark method. In business, you will oftentimes see all research being, unless you're building like driverless cars or flying cars or something that's really going to like very substantially disrupt the economy. In my experience, at least, research is very rapid. And so, because research is so rapid, you oftentimes are seeing, many people engage in it. It's not always sort of, grounded in the context of social science. But so I think what we can bring to it, even when we have to do it a little bit more rapidly, is, couching our findings, our observations, oftentimes in social theory that helps us make sense of those. And maybe we don't have the opportunity to always talk about that social theory in the workplace, maybe only with our team, maybe not even, depending on, our team members. But still, it informs our insights. And I think that's, really important.
So can you tell us about some insights in product management teamwork that you have gained in your experience that would be helpful to others?
Well, I think, one of the most important things is really to, well, one, to like maintain like an open mind, right? Always sort of continually learning, so on and so forth. But, I think one of the best things we can do is really use our theory and methods, and turn it back on ourselves as a team to improve our own team performance, right? And so, whether you want to kind of consider that a little workplace ethnography or however you want to consider it, I think our skills that we have, our knowledge and skills, should not only be sort of deployed to solve problems externally, but even as a PM, considering we're mediating across all these departments, I think we need to be turning them internally and really using that to improve the team performance and the overall culture of the team or department, functional unit, whatever it may be. And that's obviously very similar to the kind of work that you're interested in. But you don't have to be, you don't have to have a title of business anthropologist or organizational anthropologist or anything like that, right? In
Right.
all of our roles, and you don't have to be in PM, in all of our roles as an anthropologist, we can contribute that to all of our teams, whether that's the team that we work with at our job, whether it's the team we work with in a volunteering opportunity, in your house even, right? It's all of those, we can use those skills to pretty much improve, the performance of groups of people all around us.
So aside from product design work, how does anthropology aid in the critical teamwork and cross-functional collaboration aspects that is necessary for successful product management and management in general?
I think, a lot of it comes down to some of what I just said, so I don't want to repeat myself, but I think it's being the culture brokers, being open, willing to learn, using our methods on ourselves, that whole mindset, if we embody that, it will always support cross-functional teamwork and collaboration, right? All of that stuff, that willingness, that openness, and trying to foster those kind of relationships by deeply understanding them is, really, I find my experience is the key to keeping the team healthy and happy that I lead. Everybody has their own perspective. Everybody needs to be heard from their perspective. And quite frankly, the different perspectives are valuable, right? And we need to find a way to get them to all work together as smoothly as possible to enable, all the stakeholders, customers, internal, whatever that may be. When we do that, especially in the PM space, we build better products. And, when we do that in organizations, as a whole, we have healthier organizations.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about that with cross-functional collaboration, it can be challenging, especially in sort of organizational cultures that, as Elizabeth Bryant was talking about, and I've experienced this myself, is, organizational cultures that like to use blame, the whole concept of, playing the blame game. And, sort of like, well, that person's never going to do anything. They're not going to support you. They're not going to be able to contribute to this project. So just do what you can without them. Well, in my own experience, I've taken people who are seemingly rumored to be difficult, and I've kind of pinned them down and say, what is it that you need? What is the issue that you are having trouble with in your group? Or, because maybe someone else in your group is not having the same issue. What is it that you need? And to really, I hate to use the word interrogate, but you kind of have to, really pin them down on that. And it could be that they don't have anything, or whatever. But the point is that you have this kind of communication. You try to establish a much deeper rapport with people and with groups that probably the wider culture is not, or maybe the wider culture is discounting them in some way or underrepresenting them in some way. And, like what you're saying is, as anthropologists, we want to do that cultural bridging and make those connections and that kind of collaboration within the workplace, no matter if we're a product manager or what our job is, no matter what our title is.
Yeah, one of the interesting things also that Elizabeth said is, people are oftentimes in the forest and where they can't see through the trees. And, so that is frequently the case for all of us in life at various times, various moments, right? Like, at various places, various times. And so, it's helpful to have somebody who is trained to sort of mediate between them to help others see that. And of course, sometimes we also need that for ourselves, like even though we are trained to do so. But just having somebody around who intentionally thinks like that and is trying to design, for those kind of outcomes, is one of the really valuable things that we bring to the table, meaning to like an organization. And it's not to say that people who don't have anthropological training don't do it well or anything like that. There are some people who do it excellently, there are many people who are excellent, UX researchers, organizational culture people, all not from anthropology, but, certainly our training lends itself to that. And we should really try to promote that as one of, one of the things we let hiring managers know that we can do.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything else you want to add and speak to while we're here?
Well, maybe for anybody who's interested in PM, in product management work particularly, even UX really, I would, for PM, I would suggest that, develop a small amount of knowledge in tech, in software engineering or kind of coding, if you will. Small amount of knowledge. I'm not saying you need to be an expert, but just, a little bit of understanding will go a long way, as it will, a little bit of understanding of design and business / sort of finance skills. If you want to be a PM, you ought to know a little bit of all of those, because one, you're working with those teams, but also, you're going to have duties that involve all of that to some degree, even if it's just leading certain aspects. Similarly, like UX, if somebody's interested in going to UX, I would also suggest, knowing a little bit about tech, coding and business, it just helps. Knowing like that context that you're designing for, it will go a long way. And for all anthropologists, I would suggest those are also good skills, but particularly design. Good design can help us sell our ideas. And so no matter what role we are in, what organization we are in, if we are able to visually communicate our ideas, they oftentimes are, at least I find in my experience, more easily adopted. So I would suggest that everybody spend some time on basic design skills. I think that will never go to waste.
And even I noticed there was a time when I was interested in a product management position. And I took some courses on LinkedIn. There's courses on LinkedIn, that you can take that kind of help you understand what this whole picture of product management is, And I realized that a lot of it I had been doing many, many times before. I didn't know I was doing it, So I have done project management before, and I have worked with coders, and I have worked with engineers, and on a cross collaborative scale, I guess you could say, and so and sometimes, like what you were saying earlier, it's the matter of the language that you use and how things are defined. And I read about Agile and I read about Scrum, and I'm like, this is exactly what we did at Toyota. We just didn't call it Agile and Scrum. This is the way we lived our lives every day, So so really, sometimes it's not like you're necessarily learning anything new. There's a lot of things a lot of transferable skills that come into that product management space that probably a lot of people already have, and they just don't know it.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think you summed it up well. I mean, and these are a lot of this is not new. I mean, there's a few, there's obviously some technologies to be used Absolutely. For like analytics and tracking. There's some skills to be acquired, but that you were there pulling together, and leading skills from other departments, other disciplines that have existed a long time. This is not. It's nothing that's on the cutting edge necessarily, aside from some of the tools we use.
Well, Matt, I really appreciate you taking the time today and speaking to us. Thank you so much. And I think your presentation is very, very insightful for people who, not only want to get into product management, but, people who want to get into anthropology. Come on, everybody, let's go.
Great. Yeah, so if anybody has any follow-up questions, anybody can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you post it. So.
Right. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.